Here we are again, another edition of the Brattlecast. I'm Jordan Rich, and I have the pleasure of sitting down with my good friend Ken Gloss from the Brattle Bookshop in Boston, antiquarian bookshop that is known worldwide, not just countrywide, but worldwide, featured in major motion pictures and a whole lot more. Ken, I almost wanted to bring in a bartender for today's topic.
Actually, it would have been really interesting if we could have prepared enough ahead of time, but I also have to drive back to the store after this.
Yes,
so.
we are very responsible here on this podcast, the Brattlecast. So why did I bring up cocktails?
You brought up cocktails because a few weeks ago, a lady came in and she had a bunch of books. They were nice, nothing great, but one caught my eye. It's by a man named Jerry Thomas, and it's called The Bartender's Guide. Mm-hmm. And this edition of it is a little bit later. This is an 1880s edition. Wow. He did the first one in 1862, and he was basically, quote, the father of American mixology. Oh. And he was a character. He was in San Francisco. I guess he was such a performer and a bartender and creating and mixing and putting down how to do drinks that he was making more money than the Vice President of the United States at the time.
Well, one thing,
maybe better known.
Maybe, and more popular. One of the things that strikes me, you talk about the era, and I'm thinking, whiskey and rotgut in a bar in the Western saloons. But obviously people all over the country were getting into various concoctions.
Well, there were some fancy hotels in San Francisco, too, at that period.
Yeah.
And there was a lot of money moving west. But it was interesting because I was going through, and a lot of these drinks were things that you would see, like the real Georgia mint julep. Take a spoonful of white powdered sugar, a half a glass of wine, of cognac brandy, pitch, and then 12 sprigs of this one was peach. So, and then mixing it together. But he was particularly famous for a drink called the Blue Blazer.
All right, tell me more about that.
The Blue Blazer, now you can't make it for one. It has to be two. Mm-hmm. And what it is you take a cup, 2 cups, and you heat it. And basically it's a whiskey drink. Mm-hmm. You need hot water. And you don't need hot water for the drink. You need to put the cups in hot water to heat them up. You put the whiskey in the cup, you light it on fire, and you mix it between 2 separate cups.
Now we're talking about a Broadway show here.
And then you just have the flames going in between the cups. But you have to have 2 because you're using 2 cups. You keep the cups warm. One of the instructions on making this drink is don't have anything flammable on the table in front of you.
Yeah, that could be a quick end to your dinner party.
Well, I guess at dinner, when he did it, one of the big things that caught the eye was you'd see the blue flame going from cup to cup.
Wow.
But he was one of the ones who literally first sort of pulled together the idea of how to make drinks, how to put them. He also, the Tom Collins, his name was Thomas.
Makes sense.
So he would tell you how to plain and fancy drinks. And it was books on cocktails, drinks, have become, especially in the last 20 years or so.
Well, I'm sure you're familiar with the Mr. Boston books.
We had a first edition of that.
You want to explain what I'm referring to?
Old Mr. Boston started in the 1920s, and basically it was a mixology book. And the first edition of it tells you how to make it. And it's the standard bartender's guide. I mean, it's gone through maybe 100 editions, and it's still used, and it's still the one that people who are learning how to be bartenders, or if you get a drink maybe and you are a professional and you don't quite know what it is, you can look it up.
So would this be considered like a textbook for bartending enthusiasts or for consumers? What was it?
It was more for bartenders.
Okay.
And it would also tell you things like lager beers. to get it in cases, but you have to keep it at a certain temperature. And he was also sometimes talking about the problems that if it had been delivered, when it's delivered, it has to be kept cold, because otherwise, if you walk a long distance with it on rollers, it could heat up, and then you've got to cool it down for 4 days. So he was not only talking about what it is, but this was definitely something for bartenders, for the professional, and there are a lot of collectors who like books like this.
I would imagine a whole range of culinary books of all kinds, but this is a special category. Let me ask you this. In those days, ice wasn't created electronically.
Well, one of the interesting things about it, and this is going off, there used to be ice makers.
Ice houses.
And ice houses where literally they would go out to lakes and ponds in the winter and cut the ice and then bring them into these cold houses, sometimes insulated with sawdust.
Right.
And you would buy ice. As a matter of fact, where I used to live in Newton, they have a place called Crystal Lake, and there was a company that used to cut ice. Now, and keep it, store it, and sell it. Now, one of the things that, one of the things I love about bringing a book like this is your subject can change. They used to be able to cut 3 and 4 foot blocks of ice out of Newton Center. Now that lake barely ever freezes.
Well, that's where we get the term icebox. They would deliver the block of ice to a family's kitchen, and you'd put the block of ice in the icebox. I'm thinking of The Honeymooners, Ralph Cramden. You put the ice, and that would be your refrigerator, basically.
That would be your refrigerator, freezer.
Right.
Matter of fact, they even sent ice to the South Seas. Now, one of the problems they had the first time they did it, when they delivered it, some of the people there had never seen ice, and they didn't realize that if you don't use it fairly quickly in warm weather, you don't end up with ice. You end up with water.
And soon steam if you're not careful.
Soon steam. But
I'm just looking through here at tea, punch. Some of these things have gone out of style, but I bet you could bring some of these back and be a hit.
Well, the interesting part about it in this book, even by the 1880s, some of the drinks had gone out of style. Then some of them came back in style, then went out of style. My guess is that in the old Mr. Boston, I didn't compare one, that probably some of these recipes are there. There's also, in the Art Nouveau period, some beautiful books done in Art Nouveau style on cocktails. And in the last 5 or 10, 15 years, collecting books on wine, cocktails, drinks have gone up tremendously. A book like this would have been, 50 years ago, maybe $25, $35. Now it might be $750, $1,000.
Is it because of the rarity or the age of the book, or both?
It's because of the rarity, the age, and also people becoming much, much more interested in the subject. Good wines are very much collected, but also now a lot of restaurants. If you go to those restaurants, especially for maybe people who are in their 30s, 20s, 40s, a big part of it, if you don't have really great cocktails, really great drinks to go with the meal, the restaurant isn't as popular. So along with that, there are people who collect the books.
And of course, the cost of a drink, I don't drink myself personally, but the cost of a cocktail now is what, average 20 in Boston?
Oh, easily.
Maybe higher. So you're talking about an investment of one drink alone. So that's why the restaurants and so forth and bars want to be up to date. But that is so cool.
And I'm sure that I could probably go through page by page of different. They have punches. They have for the time of the season.
Yeah, the Rocky Mountain Punch caught my eye.
Oh, here's prepared cocktails for bottling.
Oh,
so you could buy the mixes, and so much of it is the same but different. And I think that's one of the things that also comes across.
Well, that's what we talk about a lot on this Brattlecast is the origin story of so many things, and the origin story is often found in a book, as this is the case.
I'm looking at egg nogs, brandy smashes, I'm looking at all sorts of fancy vermouth cocktail, which
If someone just tuned in, not that it's like radio you tune in, but if someone just moved the guidepost to this section of the podcast, they might think that we're a couple of lushes. But
well, I'll tell you, I probably drink as much as you do, but I would love to see somebody mix and make a blue blazer, as long as I had fire extinguisher.
Exactly,
on the
exactly.
side. And that's one of the fun things too, that you get something like this in, even though it's not my major interest. I looked at it. It was fun. I started looking at some of the drinks, and I'm saying, I know there'll be a good customer who will love this.
Absolutely. I'll drink to that.
Yes, exactly.
He's Ken Gloss. This is Jordan. Always great to be with Ken. And, of course, you can go to brattlebookshop.com and find out all kinds of cool stuff. And keep listening to the Brattlecast. Ken, we'll see you next time.
Well, I'm happy to come back, and I've got loads of stories.